wonder, secrets unfold. True crime stories, let the intrigue be told. Grab a seat, get cozy, let's dive into the plot. With Mac J by my side, there's so much to be sought. Mods from the stars, they light up the night. Chillin' with Van, everything feels just right. Welcome to the mystery, the thrill, the thrill we embrace. Solving cases together we'll trace. With Tabby and Maggie, the journey's begun. With laughter and stories, we'll shine like the sun. Spirit Time vibes with Lisa and Mark. Tia and Mel igniting the spark. According to Lean, curiosity flows. A curious rose in a garden of woes. Sweet misery whispers, tales that enthrall. While Matt, Meg, and Jody, we gather them all. Welcome to the mystery, the thrill we embrace. Solving cases together we'll trace. With Tabby and Maggie, the journey's begun. With laughter and stories, we'll shine like the sun. So come along, join the fun tonight. In Aussie true crime, everything feels so right.
Hey, beautiful people.
Hi, everyone.
What a beautiful day for justice.
Yes.
Now, I have to apologise that we moved it from the 9:30. We wanted to do this live, but what happened is there was big notices put across everything that if anyone telecasted it live or rebroadcasted it, we could have got charged or have offences against us. What neither me or Mac J wanted.
No.
So our next best thing was doing it after. Mary Jane, how are you, my darling? Welcome in, beautiful. So we have the stream from ABC News. I have the link in the chat as well. I don't think they're going to take it down now, but we'll try. Focus, how are you, beautiful?
Hi, Focus.
I think he's doing his first live tomorrow night too, so.
Well, that'll be good.
Mm-hmm. All right, let me get on the right screen. So at the start, there's about a half an hour of going through basically the case, but it also shows us Erin getting to the court. So I wanted to add this part in.
You're with ABC News. It's 9 a.m. Eastern. We are live to Melbourne this hour, where convicted triple murderer Erin Patterson will be sentenced for killing 3 relatives with poisonous death cap mushrooms. Now, in a Victorian first, the judge's decision will be broadcast live, and we will bring you that as soon as it starts in about half an hour. We're also going to have live reaction from outside court and comprehensive coverage throughout the day. In a moment, I will be joined by former Supreme Court Judge Anthony Whealy, who will talk us through the sentencing process. It is Monday, the 8th of September. I'm Gemma Vaness, and this is ABC News Mornings. Convicted triple murderer Erin Patterson will soon be sentenced by a judge in the Victorian Supreme Court. marking the conclusion of the mushroom murder case that has gripped the world. In July, a jury found her guilty of the murders of 3 of her lunch guests and the attempted murder of a 4th after she served them a meal containing death cap mushrooms at her home in Leongatha in Victoria's South Gippsland region. It was on July 29, 2023. The victims were all directly related to Patterson's estranged husband, Simon Patterson. His parents, Gail and Don, both died, along with Gail's sister, Heather Wilkinson. Heather's husband, Ian Wilkinson, survived after weeks of treatment in hospital. Erin Patterson pleaded not guilty and always maintained the deadly lunch was a tragic accident. More than 50 witnesses gave evidence during the marathon 2-month trial at the Latrobe Valley Law Courts in Morwell. The jury was shown video of Patterson visiting hospital after the lunch. Doctors told the court she showed no signs of death cap mushroom poisoning. Jurors were also shown security vision of her dumping a food dehydrator at a local transfer station and photos of the individual beef Wellington servings.
Oh, wow.
The prosecution presented messages it said demonstrated the deterioration in the relationship between Patterson.
Didn't that just look like an old pie? Like the inside?
Yeah.
And her in-laws. After 6.5 days of deliberations, the jury found Patterson guilty on all 4 charges. Last month, police released Patterson's police interview, recorded a week after the deadly lunch.
Obviously, we've got concerns in relation to these mushrooms and where they've come from. Okay. Is that something you've done in the past, foraging for mushrooms or anything like that? Never?
No.
Right. Do you preserve foods or anything like that?
No.
Have you ever dehydrated food or anything like that? Okay.
Patterson most recently appeared in the Supreme Court, this time in Melbourne, where the 50-year-old heard from the people affected by her offending through victim impact statements. Ian Wilkinson spoke of his enduring grief of losing his wife of 44 years, while a statement from Simon Patterson was read to the court, revealing the devastating impact on the couple's 2 children. Justice Christopher Beale will sentence Erin Patterson shortly, and for the first time in Victoria, it'll be live streamed and televised. Justice Beale says he made the decision to increase understanding of the workings of the court. Well, our reporter Alexandra Alvaro has covered the case extensively. She joins us now from outside the Victoria Supreme Court. Alex, let's go to that decision to broadcast this live. It's a first for the Victorian Supreme Court. Tell us more about why the decision has been made.
Well, firstly, Gemma, I just wanted to let you know that the prison van has just arrived. We've seen the prison van arrive. There are PSOs outside the court, and we believe that Erin Patterson is likely in that prison van. So she has.
Hey, beautiful Tracy.
Hi,
I just gotta say, and me and Mac J were just talking about this before we came on. This is a first for Victoria to let cameras in the stream. Like, I know through COVID we got a few hearings, mainly if they're like Parliament ones we get, but to actually get a criminal hearing like this is a first, and it's definitely a first time in Victoria.
Yes. So we're hoping
the good thing is this could open up things in the future, so we might start getting more case files and more court hearings, especially for high profile.
Yes.
And another high-profile case that we are following is Phoebe. So let's hope that this opens up things for other cases to be broadcast.
Yeah, that would be great.
Has arrived at court for her sentencing. But to your question, yes, this is the first time that the Supreme Court has decided to let a television camera inside the court. It's highly unusual. Usually in court, only journalists are allowed to use their phones. They're not allowed to film, definitely not allowed to record anything. So having a camera in court full stop is unusual, but having a television camera in court is even more unusual. And as you say, the reason for that is Justice Beale wanted to be able to get this information out to the public promptly and completely, given the public interest in this case. Now, the feed will just be of Justice Bill. We won't be able to see the full courtroom. We won't be able to see Erin Patterson on this feed. Only the journalists and members of the public and the legal team will be able to get the full picture of what is happening in court. But we will nonetheless be able to see Justice Bill delivering his sentence. And we know that it's set to go for about 45 minutes, we've heard. That's an estimation. But we have discussed as journos that during this trial, nothing has really run on time. The trial was meant to go for 5 to 6 weeks, and it ended up blowing out to about 11 weeks. So we can't be sure that it will take exactly 45 minutes, but that's the estimation that we've been given, and we'll bring that live to you as it comes through.
And Alex, as you say, it looks as though Erin Patterson has arrived. What do we know of her movements today?
So Erin Patterson is currently in custody. She's being housed at the Dame Phyllis Frost maximum security prison in Deer Park. Sorry, it is a bit loud out here. Let me know if you can't hear me. But so she's in custody at the moment. As I say, she's just arrived in a prison van. When she walks into the courtroom, she'll likely be flanked by prison officers. And she'll take a seat in the courtroom, and that's where she'll listen to her sentence. Once it's over, she'll...
It's a shame that prison van looks as cold as her prison cell.
Oh.
She complained about that.
She did?
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
She complained about her prison conditions and how cold her cell was. And she looked awfully cold in getting out of that prison van. I even look at the media, like at the gate behind it.
Oh, wow.
You can see the media all just trying to get that picture of her.
Yeah, for sure.
Again, be taken out of the
Crazy.
courtroom, loaded back into the van,
Definitely.
and head back to Deer Park to Dame Phyllis Frost.
We've just seen Erin Patterson go in, and Alex, we can hear you just fine there. The courtroom, I mean, it will be full. Of course, family members, friends, the media, onlookers. There's a lot of interest in this.
Yes, so I'm standing on Lonsdale Street for those of you who know Melbourne, but on William Street around the corner, there is just a massive line of journalists and members of the public who are waiting to get into that courtroom. There will be limited seats available. I'm sure there will be people who miss out on actually getting to be in that courtroom today.
I find it interesting too, just a FYI, that they done the whole case in Morwell, yet done the sentencing in Melbourne.
Yeah, I think that's a bit of showing, I guess. Maybe to accommodate all the journalists and stuff, maybe. I don't know.
It's just funny that they moved it to Melbourne just for the sentencing.
Yeah.
My colleague Steph Ferrier earlier spoke to members of the public who had been waiting. As you might know, during the trial, there were court watchers who rocked up to court every day in the Latrobe Valley law courts just to watch the trial, to listen to the evidence. So there's been huge public interest in this case, as you know, and that won't be stopping today.
And that public interest has even been intense outside of Australia. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so, I mean, obviously there have been local Melbourne journalists covering the case, the usual court journalists that you see here at the Supreme Court, but there have been national media and then, of course, international media. So, podcasts, documentaries even, books are being written about this trial as we speak. So no shortage of attention there. The BBC was covering this trial, our colleagues at the BBC, and then also the Daily Mail had journalists covering the entire trial. So a huge media contingent. I've spoken to colleagues who say this is probably the biggest trial they've ever covered in terms of just the sheer amount of coverage and the sheer amount of journalists who have come along to watch this trial. And that's just due to the insatiable public interest in this case. And, I've thought about this. I'm not really sure what it is that attracts people to this case. It could be a number of reasons. Is it the fact that Erin Patterson is a woman and she's committed these crimes? Is it the mundanity of these crimes taking place at a lunch, at a family lunch in such a small Australian town? Is the murder weapon the fact that mushrooms were used and concealed in this meal to kill her victims? There are many different reasons, I think, why people have been fascinated by this case, but I think in that, it's important to acknowledge that today there are victims, and when I say victims, of course, the people who have died, Ian Wilkinson, but also the family members who are really impacted by this trial. This crime has had ripple effects in the small community of Korumburra.
Yeah, I wanted to speak about that. I mean, the families affected and those small communities, because I guess today is about the sentencing, of course, and that will provide some closure to those who have been interested in this case. Perhaps not so for the families and those communities that are still grieving.
Yeah, and last time we were in court, this was during a plea hearing not too long ago, a couple of weeks ago. We heard from some of those family members. We heard victim impact statements from them, and this is the opportunity for family members really to address the accused and tell the court about the impacts that the crimes have had on them. So we heard from Ian Wilkinson, the sole surviving guest of the lunch, and one of the things he said is it's one of the distressing shortcomings of our society that so much attention is showered on those who do evil and so little on those who do good. So I guess there he's talking about the extreme attention that we've seen on Erin Patterson as the offender, but the proportionally little attention that we've seen on her victims. And by all accounts, these people, Don and Gail Patterson, Ian and Heather Wilkinson, are incredibly decent people. They were incredibly decent people who will be very missed. Ian Wilkinson is the pastor at the Korumburra Baptist Church. He is very well known, and by extension, Heather too. Very charitable people, very generous people. Don and Gail, very religious people. These people had grandchildren, and in some cases, their parents have actually outlived them. Gail and Heather's father outlived them, and Don's mother outlived him. So these are elderly parents of elderly people who have outlived their children, which is just incredibly sad.
Our reporter Alexandra Alvaro, who is outside the Victoria Supreme Court there. Thank you, and we will return to Alex throughout the morning. Now, Anthony Wheely KC is a former New South Wales Supreme Court judge and chair of the Centre for Public Integrity, and he joins us now. Anthony Wheely, thank you for your time. Firstly, can I get your thoughts, on this momentous decision to broadcast this sentencing live from the court and the reason that that decision has been taken?
Well, I think that the whole idea of opening up the courts by way of live view is a very healthy sign. There's too much mystique around the courts. People don't know what happens there. We find that the shock jocks and some of the commentators make a lot of fuss about sentences being too light. This gives everyone the opportunity to understand how a sentence is formulated and what principles underline it. So it's a very good thing, I think.
Yeah, a lot of transparency in that. The sentencing process, I've heard it described as being mechanical in part, but then ultimately, of course, a judgment call. How would you describe it?
Well, I think it varies from case to case. Sentencing in general terms is very complex and very difficult. But this case is not as difficult as many others because it's generally agreed that the crime committed here was of a very serious kind. The court's task is to weigh up the objective seriousness of the offence and then to determine whether there are any mitigating factors that might ameliorate a stern sentence. And here, there's they'll see.
I'm just going to fast forward
of the mushroom murder case, as we know, has gripped the world. As it begins, we will go to that. Alex, in the meantime,
after a long trial,
in this case was poisonous mushrooms, which is
this is where the judge comes
peculiar.
on.
It's highly unusual. So I think that's one element. I think also the fact that this has happened in a very small Australian town in Gippsland. the community in Leongatha is very small. That is where the lunch was hosted, and then also it takes in victims, this case from Corumburra, another small community where the sole surviving guest of the lunch passed.
Here we
Taking you now to
go.
the court.
Erin Patterson, after a long trial during which you gave evidence that the poisoning of your 4 lunch guests on the 29th of July was an accident, the jury found you guilty of 3 counts of murder and 1 count of attempted murder. In other words, the jury necessarily found that you deliberately served poison meals to Gail and Don Patterson and Heather and Ian Wilkinson, and that you did so intending to kill them. Only Ian Wilkinson survived. The maximum penalty for murder is life imprisonment, and for attempted murder, 25 years imprisonment. Murder is also a standard sentence offence, and the standard sentence offence for murder is 25 years imprisonment. The prosecution submits, and your counsel concedes, that your offending falls into the worst category of offending for these offences, and that you should receive the maximum penalties for your crimes. I agree, for reasons that I will come to in due course. The prosecution also submits that, having regard to the horrendous nature of your crimes, I should not fix a non-parole period. In other words, the prosecution submits that you should never have the opportunity of being released from prison on parole. Your counsel challenged this submission, relying principally on the harsher than usual conditions of your imprisonment, which both sides agree are likely to continue for the foreseeable future. Whether or not to fix a non-parole period is the main dispute which I have to determine. These sentencing reasons consist of 4 parts. First, the circumstances of the offences. Second, your circumstances. Third, relevant sentencing law. And fourth, the actual sentences. It is convenient at this stage to mention one aspect of sentencing law. Where the prosecution alleges circumstances that aggravate your offending, the prosecution must prove those circumstances beyond reasonable doubt. Where the defence alleges circumstances of mitigation, the defence must prove those circumstances on the balance of probabilities. Just before I turn to the circumstances of your offences, I note that at your trial, the prosecution conceded that they could not prove motive. As is standard, I directed the jury that the prosecution did not have to prove motive, only the elements of the offences, and that, quote, some murders occur for no apparent reason. The motives for such murders may only ever be known to the offenders. Clearly, the jury was satisfied beyond reasonable doubt that you committed the alleged offences. Only you know why you committed them. I will not be speculating about that matter. I will begin my discussion of the circumstances of your offences with the fact that you were familiar with the iNaturalist website from at least May 2022. That is a website on which people can post and view sightings of death-cap mushrooms, amongst other things. On the 28th of May 22, you accessed the iNaturalist website and navigated to its worldwide map in relation to sightings of death-cap mushrooms. Using that map, you accessed information concerning the sighting of death-cap mushrooms in Moorabbin, a suburb of Melbourne. In late 22, a dispute arose between you and your estranged husband, Simon Patterson, regarding child support payments for your 2 young children who live with you. In December 22, you referred to that dispute in your communications with a Facebook Messenger group with whom you shared an interest in true crime.
Yep.
You were scathing in your remarks about both Simon and his parents, Don and Gail Patterson. Amongst other things, you derided your father-in-law's suggestion that you and Simon get together and pray for your children, commenting, quote, this family, I swear to fucking God. You called them, quote, a lost cause. You wondered whether they had, quote, any capacity for self-reflection at all. You said, quote, fuck them. and that you suspected the best thing you could do was, quote, just to forget about all of them and live your life. You accused Simon of, quote, gaslighting you, and Don and Gail of using, quote, weasel words. You called Simon, quote, a deadbeat, and wondered why Gail was not, quote, horrified by his stance regarding child support. According to your testimony at trial, and to a lesser extent Simon's testimony, the dispute over child support had resolved by early 23. On the 18th of April 23, one Christine McKenzie, a former poison specialist, was visiting her daughter in Lock, which is a small town about a 25-minute drive northwest of Leongatha, where you lived. Miss McKenzie observed death cap mushrooms in Lock Reserve and posted details of her observations, including photographs, on the iNaturalist's website the same day. Ms McKenzie disposed of all the death cap mushrooms that she could find because of the dangers she thought they posed, especially to young children. On the morning of the 28th of April 23, your mobile phone, which was never recovered by investigators, connected to certain cell towers consistent with a possible visit by you to the Lock Reserve. That afternoon, you purchased a food dehydrator in Leongatha. Between the 28th of April and the 4th of May 23, you photographed forage mushrooms on the trays of your dehydrator. The images were found by investigators on a Samsung tablet later seized from your home. Dr. Tom May, a world-renowned expert in fungi, gave evidence at your trial that those images were, quote, consistent with death cap mushrooms to a high degree of confidence. On the 21st of May 23, Dr. May observed death cap mushrooms in Nielsen Street, Outram. Outram is a small town about a 23-minute drive southwest of Leongatha. Later that day, Dr. May posted details of his observations, including photographs, on the iNaturalist website. On the morning of the 22nd of May 23, your phone connected to certain cell towers consistent with a possible visit by you to Lock Reserve. Later that morning, your phone connected to certain cell towers consistent with a possible visit by you to Nielsen Street, Outram. On the 24th of June 23, you hosted a lunch at your Leongatha home attended by Don and Gail and your children. You had invited Simon to that lunch, but he declined, saying in a text message, quote, "Hi, Erin. Thank you for your kind lunch invite, together with Mum and Dad. I'm sorry, I'll decline, as I feel too uncomfortable about it." Between the 28th of June and the 7th of July 23, there were a series of messages between you and Gail in which you falsely represented that you had undergone a needle biopsy for a lump in your arm and an MRI. In response to a message from Gail as to how you got on with your medical tests, you messaged her on the 7th of July 23 that, quote, "There's a bit to digest with everything that's come out of it all. I might talk more about it with you both when I see you in person." On the 16th of July 23, you attended the Sunday service at the Corumburra Baptist Church, where Ian Wilkinson was and is the pastor. After the service, you invited Gail and Don Patterson and Heather and Ian Wilkinson to lunch at your home at Gibson Street, Leongatha, on the 29th of July 23. Both the Pattersons and the Wilkinsons were surprised by the invitation, as the Wilkinsons had never previously been invited to a meal at your home. You also invited Simon, telling him that you had invited his parents and his aunt and uncle. You told him you had some important medical news which you wanted to discuss at the lunch and that you did not want the children to be present. Simon initially accepted your invitation and informed his parents that the purpose of the lunch was to discuss your medical issues and how to inform the children. On the evening of the 28th of July 23, Simon and you exchanged messages. Simon's read, quote, "Sorry, I feel too uncomfortable about coming to the lunch with you, Mum, Dad, Heather and Ian tomorrow. But I am happy to talk about your health and implications of that at another time if you'd like to discuss on the phone. Just let me know. You replied 5 minutes later, quote, "That's really disappointing. I've spent many hours this week preparing lunch for tomorrow, which is..."
I didn't want to stop him, but I want to say hello to beautiful Tabby and little Miss Sharon. Welcome in.
Welcome.
We're just listening to the judge go over the sentencing for Erin Patterson.
Yep. Mushroom lady.
It's been exhausting in light of the issues I'm facing, and spent a small fortune on beef eye fillet to make beef Wellingtons because I wanted it to be a special meal, as I may not be able to host a lunch like this again for some time. It's important to me that you're all there tomorrow and that I can have the conversations that I need to have. I hope you'll change your mind.
I was very happy,
Your
put it that
parents
way.
and Heather and Ian are coming at 12:30. I hope to see you there. On Saturday, the 29th of July 23, you served your 4 lunch guests individual beef Wellingtons, which were deliberately poisoned with death cap mushrooms. You gave evidence at your trial that had Simon attended the lunch, you would also have served him a beef Wellington. I accept the evidence of Ian Wilkinson that you served your guests their meals on 4 grey plates, while your individual beef Wellington was on a smaller orangey tan coloured plate, a fact that Heather also commented on to Ian and Simon the next day. I find that you did this to ensure that you did not mistakenly consume a poisoned meal. I also accept the evidence of Ian Wilkinson that at the conclusion of the meal, you falsely told your guests that you had been diagnosed with cancer and sought their advice as to whether and how you should break the news to your children that you had a life-threatening illness. Not long after this conversation started, your son and his friend, who had gone to a movie, returned home. The conversation about cancer ceased, but not before all your lunch guests, at Ian's suggestion, prayed for your health. Soon after, they left. Around midnight to 1 a.m. on Sunday the 30th of July 23, all of your lunch guests fell seriously ill, suffering repeated vomiting and diarrhoea. On Sunday morning, Gail and Don informed Simon of their conditions and called an ambulance, which took them to nearby Corumburra Hospital. Simon attended the Wilkinsons' home to find that Heather and Ian were similarly unwell. He took them first to Corumburra Hospital, but was redirected to Leongatha Hospital because of limited resources. By way of contrast, you made a round trip of approximately 2 hours on Sunday afternoon to take your son to a flying lesson at Tyab. By the Sunday evening, Don and Gail had been transferred to Dandenong Hospital. On the morning of Monday, the 31st of July, 23, Ian and Heather were also transferred to Dandenong Hospital. Later that day, Gail and Don were transferred to the Austin Hospital, as were Heather and Ian on Tuesday, the 1st of August, 23. All of them were experiencing advanced multiple organ failure. Having learned from Simon on the Sunday that your parents-in-law had been hospitalised, you attended Leongatha Hospital on the Monday, complaining of diarrhoea. You did not stay long. Shortly after a doctor indicated to you that death cap mushroom poisoning was suspected, you left, despite warnings by another doctor and nurse that your life was in danger. You returned over an hour and a half later. When you returned, you showed reluctance to receive treatment for suspected death cap mushroom poisoning and to organise...
Miss Sharon, he says it further on, but he actually admits that if she had told people earlier that some of the victims could have been saved.
Yeah.
It's a medical assessment for your children who were at school. Medical staff were urging you to have the children assessed because you claimed, falsely, that on the Sunday night you fed them the leftovers of the beef Wellingtons with the pastry and mushrooms scraped off. Eventually, you arranged with Simon to collect the children and bring them to hospital. On the Monday morning, police recovered beef Wellington remains from a bin outside your home, which were later found to contain death cap mushroom toxins. On the Monday afternoon, you were transferred to Monash Medical Centre in Clayton. Simon brought the children there. You and the children were kept in hospital overnight for observation. At both Leongatha Hospital and Monash Medical Centre, you were asked by various people, including doctors and representatives of the Health Department and the Child Protection Service, where you had sourced the mushrooms for the beef Wellingtons. You said you had purchased some fresh mushrooms at Woolworths and some dried mushrooms from an Asian grocery. You were vague about the location of the Asian grocery, claiming you had purchased the dried mushrooms several months before and that the shop could have been in one of a number of suburbs that fall within the boundaries of the city of Monash. You denied having foraged for mushrooms, a lie repeated in your recorded police interview on the 5th of August 23. At your trial, you maintained the story about having sourced some of the mushrooms from an Asian grocery, but testified that in May and June of 23, you had foraged for edible mushrooms in various places, including the Corumburra Botanical Gardens. You testified that you had dehydrated these mushrooms and put them in a container which contained the dried mushrooms from the Asian grocery, and that you used the dried mushrooms in that container along with the fresh mushrooms from Woolworths in the beef Wellingtons. You testified that in this way, death cap mushrooms must have accidentally found their way into the meals served to your lunch guests. The jury rejected this elaborate explanation. They found that you deliberately poisoned the meals of your lunch guests. I am satisfied that your vague story about the Asian grocery was a lie. When you realised that the lie would not work because death cap mushrooms cannot be cultivated commercially, and there were no other reports of people falling ill from mushrooms purchased at Asian groceries, you changed tack. You concocted the story you told the jury about foraged mushrooms ending up in the container with the Asian grocery mushrooms and then accidentally ending up in the beef Wellingtons. On the afternoon of Tuesday, the 1st of August 23, you and the children were discharged from Monash Hospital. On the morning of the 2nd of August 23, you disposed of your dehydrator at a local tip, the Coonwarra transfer station. On the 4th of August 23, investigators recovered your dehydrator from the tip. Forensic examination revealed that the dehydrator contained traces of death cap mushrooms. That same day, 4th of August 23, Heather Wilkinson, aged 66, and Gail Patterson, aged 70, died from death cap mushroom poisoning. And Don Patterson, who was desperately ill, was given a liver transplant. On the 5th of August 23, the police executed a search warrant at your home. You handed over a dummy phone. It was not the phone that you had been using throughout most of 23, the phone which on the 28th of April 23 had connected to certain cell towers indicating a possible visit to Lock, and which on the 22nd of May 23 had connected to certain cell towers indicating possible visits to Lock and Outram. In your recorded interview following the search, you denied having foraged for mushrooms and denied owning a dehydrator. Late on the 5th of August 23, Don Patterson, aged 70, died from death cap mushroom poisoning. Ian Wilkinson very nearly died, but gradually his condition improved. On the 21st of August 23, he was discharged from the intensive care unit to a ward at the Austin Hospital. On the 11th of September 23, he was moved to the Heidelberg Repatriation Hospital. On the 21st of September 23, he was discharged home. He has not fully recovered. He has reduced kidney function, ongoing respiratory issues, and reduced energy.
Did it just freeze?
On the November 23 of your offending. Your offending which resulted in the death of 3 people and near death of another, involved substantial premeditation. I am satisfied that by the 16th of July 23, when you unusually invited Simon, his parents and his aunt and uncle to a lunch without the children to discuss your non-existent medical issues, you did so with the intention of killing them all. The dehydrator, which you purchased in late April 23, enabled you to preserve death cap mushrooms, which you put into the individual beef Wellingtons served to your guests. Whether those death cap mushrooms came from
100%
Locke on the
Miss
28th of April 23, or from Locke or Outram on the 22nd of May 23, or from another location in May or June of 23, as you suggested in your testimony, is in my view of no great moment. After learning from Simon on Sunday the 30th of July 23 that some or all of your lunch guests had been hospitalised, you showed no pity for your victims. Instead of informing those treating the Pattersons and Wilkinsons that you had used foraged mushrooms, which you could have done without having to admit that you had deliberately poisoned their meals, you repeatedly denied foraging, insisting that the mushrooms for the beef Wellingtons were sourced solely from Woolworths and an Asian grocery. We will never know whether revealing the use of foraged mushrooms would have made a difference for 23, because at that stage, the evidence regarding the type of toxin was inconclusive. Similarly, the administration of NAC to preserve the victims' livers from toxins was not commenced until almost midnight on the 30th of July 23 for Don Patterson and on the 31st of July 23 for the others. The prosecution submitted that I should infer from your pitiless behaviour that your intention to kill was ongoing and that this constitutes an additional aggravating circumstance. I accept that submission. As the Wilkinsons' daughter, Ruth Dubois, remarked in her victim impact statement, you, quote, followed through on your lethal plan. Your lunch guests each suffered severe gastrointestinal illness on the Sunday and Monday prior to being sedated and mechanically ventilated. Their suffering was protracted. And Ian Wilkins suffers ongoing health issues. This aggravates your offending. The prosecution submitted that you must have anticipated that your victims would suffer in the way they did. I am satisfied of that beyond reasonable doubt. It is implausible that you would have selected death cap mushrooms without ascertaining how they would work upon your victims. Further, the devastating impact of your crimes is not limited to your direct victims. Your crimes have harmed a great many people. I will expand on this aggravating circumstance when I turn to the victim impact statements. In addition to denying the use of foraged mushrooms, you engaged in an elaborate cover-up of your guilt. I find that you disposed of the 4 grey plates on which you served the poisoned beef Wellingtons. You falsely made out that you had fed your children leftover beef Wellingtons with the pastry and mushrooms scraped off. You feigned illness. You disposed of the dehydrator soon after you were released from hospital. You maintained the vague story about sourcing dried mushrooms at an Asian grocery and had the gall to tell police in your recorded police interview that you had been very, very helpful to the health department in its investigation of the incident.
Oh my God.
You disposed of your phone and provided police with a dummy phone. You lied to the police in your recorded police interview about various matters. Finally, and most importantly, your offending involved an enormous betrayal of trust. Your victims were all your relatives by marriage. More than that, they had all been good to you and your children over many years, as you acknowledged in your testimony. Not only did you cut short 3 lives and cause lasting damage to Ian Wilkinson's health, thereby devastating the extended Patterson and Wilkinson families, you inflicted untold suffering on your own children, whom you robbed of their beloved grandparents. The victim impact statements reveal the immense and ongoing anguish suffered by your many victims, direct and indirect. No summary could do justice to the individual and collective power of those statements. It is not my intention here to summarise or refer to every statement, but rather to highlight some key aspects. 4 generations of the extended Patterson and Wilkinson families have been traumatised by your crimes, not to mention their friends.
The dad has came out, little Miss Sharon, and spoke to the media a lot about the after effects of what's happened. Basically, even though they're in a small town, everyone's talking about them. Even the kids aren't coping. Simon's not coping. Yeah. There's a lot that this has affected.
Yeah.
Don's mother, Martha Patterson, who is aged 100, made a victim impact statement. In it, she prayed for God's healing for her family. Gail and Heather's father, now deceased, also reached his 100th birthday in 2024, but tragically, only one of his 3 daughters, Lynn Young, whose statement was read to the court, was alive to mark that milestone with him. And there are many references in the statements to the trauma experienced by the Patterson and Wilkinson grandchildren. Many of your adult victims struggled not only with the loss of their loved ones and the terrible way they died, but with the distress, even guilt, at their own seeming inability to ease the suffering of those close to them. They keenly feel their limitations, and in particular, the impossibility of shielding the youngest from the incessant discussion of the case in the media, online, in public spaces, even in the schoolyard.
Oh, can you
Many
imagine?
also struggled to cope with work and studies, and many have experienced additional financial burdens. There is, of course, great anger at the callousness of your actions. To take just one example, Ian Wilkinson's sister, Dorothy Dicker, questions, quote, how anyone could sit there and watch those 4 kind and caring people eat that meal. Your failure to exhibit any remorse pours salt into all the victims' wounds. The children of your direct victims speak of the distress of watching their parents suffer in hospital. For example, Don and Gail's son Matthew remarks, quote, watching my parents suffer in hospital from severe poisoning caused shock, grief and lasting trauma. Ian and Heather's son David remembers his mother being, quote, desperate for water, which she was not allowed by medical staff, and saying her, quote, insides were burning. David also mentions his father's tortured experience, quote, black lips, gaunt face, pain and serious expression.
Family.
Yeah.
At your plea hearing, Ian Wilkinson memorably read his victim impact statement to the court. Amongst other things,
The only thing I'd
humbly
say,
expressed
and
his great admiration and love for his wife, Heather,
what's this, Judge?
and his concern for others.
Is we know that Erin came into a lot of money and I would say frivolously spent it.
Yes.
We just hope some of it, whether it be the sale of the houses, whatever, just some of it goes back into those children because they are going to need it. As little Miss Sherry said, they need the right support, and at least some of her money can go on something good,
Yes.
in my opinion.
Even you. He offered you forgiveness for what you did to him. Quote, in regards to the many harms done to me, I make an offer of forgiveness to Erin. I say harms done to me advisedly. I have no power or responsibility to forgive harms done to others. However, I encourage Erin to receive my offer of forgiveness for those harms done to me with full confession and repentance. I bear her no ill will. That offer of forgiveness presents you with an opportunity. You would do well to embrace it in the manner he suggests. In commenting on the unprecedented coverage of your case, Ian Wilkinson also made this point, quote, "It's one of the distressing shortcomings of our society that so much attention is showered on those who do evil and so little on those who do good. Your lunch guests undoubtedly belong to that company of people among us who do good." The victim impact statements make it clear that each one of them, over many years, gave of themselves generously and made lasting contributions to many, many lives, and in Ian's case, continues to make. All of them, inspired by their Christian faith, were deeply invested not only in their families but in their wider communities, as the statements from members of the Currumbara Baptist Church attest. A word that is used again and again in the statements to describe your crimes is, quote, senseless. But what also surfaces in the statements is hope and gratitude for the care shown by others. Don and Gail's daughter, Anna Terrington, writes, quote, "We have to say goodbye for now to Mum and Dad and Heather." Don's brother, Colin, writes, quote, "As Christians, they were people of hope. And sharing that hope, my loss is not one marked by despair." Ruth Dubois expresses her great appreciation for the efforts made and compassion shown by the medical teams. Simon Patterson gives thanks, quote, "for the incredibly strong, gentle, patient and caring support from friends, family, schools, our own church congregation, the wider church, colleagues, work clients, neighbours, police, government officers and our professional counsellors. We have experienced love in a special way since the murders." I will conclude my account of key aspects of the victim impact statements with what Don and Gail's son Matthew had to say about your betrayal of trust. Quote, "Erin was embraced as part of the Patterson family. She was welcomed and treated with genuine love and respect in a way she did not appear to experience from her own family. Her actions represent a profound and devastating betrayal of the trust and love extended to her. Having regard to the aggravating circumstances of your offending and the victim impact statements, I have no hesitation in finding that your offending falls into the worst category for the offences of murder and attempted murder. As the case law makes clear, the fact that it is possible to imagine even worse instances of such offences does not refute that categorisation. The gravity of your offending warrants the imposition of the maximum penalties for your crimes. I turn then to your circumstances. The information I was provided about your personal history was minimal. Your counsel simply relied on the personal history you provided in your trial testimony. There were no psychiatric or psychological reports provided, no references from character witnesses. No doubt that approach to your plea hearing was based on your instructions, but it means the account of your personal history that I am about to give is limited. You were born in Adelaide on the 30th of September 1974, making you 48 years old at the time of your offending and 50 now. Your maiden name was Scudder. In 1977, your family relocated to Melbourne, residing in Hampton. In 2004, you and Simon Patterson met whilst you were both employed at Monash City Council. Simon told the jury that he was working there as a civil engineer and you were the RSPCA's representative on the council. By 2005, you and Simon were romantically involved. In 2006, your grandmother died, leaving you a substantial inheritance. Monies from her estate were distributed between 2007 and 2015. During those years, you would be generous with your money to Simon's siblings, providing large, no-interest loans to them and their spouses so that they could purchase their own homes. On the 2nd of June 2007, you and Simon married. You told the jury that your parents did not attend the wedding. They were holidaying in Russia. Soon after your marriage, you and Simon travelled around Australia and overseas for a few months before settling in Perth. Simon got a job working for an inner-city shire council. In 2009, when you were 34, your son was born. In April 2009, you and Simon set off with the baby to explore the top end of Australia. You reached Townsville in November 2009, at which point you parted company. You flew back to Perth. Simon drove back with the baby. You rented a cottage for you and the baby. Simon rented an on-site caravan close by. This was the first of many comparatively short-term separations. You reunited by the end of January 2010. In 2011, your father died. In that year, you also opened a second-hand bookshop in Pemberton, Western Australia. In 2013, when you were pregnant, you and Simon returned to Victoria with your son to live closer to Simon's family. In 2014, your daughter was born. In 2015, you and Simon separated permanently. In 2019, your mother died, leaving you an inheritance. In June 22, you and your children moved into a newly constructed home at 84 Gibson Street, Leongatha, the home at which you served the fatal lunch on the 29th of July 23. You have no relevant criminal history. You maintain your innocence. In other words, there is no evidence of remorse. I turn now to the conditions of your imprisonment. As mentioned, you have been in custody since the 2nd of November 23. There were 2 affidavits tendered relating to your conditions of imprisonment. The first was sworn by a solicitor who acts for you and was based largely on your instructions. The second affidavit was sworn by Jennifer Hosking, Assistant Commissioner, Sentence Management Division at Corrections Victoria, who also testified at your plea hearing. Ms. Hosking's evidence included confirmation of the following matters. You have a, quote, maximum security rating and, quote, major offender status. Because of the nature of your crimes and your notoriety, you have been assessed as being at significant risk from other prisoners. You have not been assessed as posing a risk to other prisoners. You have spent approximately 16 months of your 22 months at Dame Phyllis Frost Centre in a management unit called the Gordon Unit, and the rest of the time in a protection unit called the Murray Unit. A management unit is more restrictive than a protection unit. You have been in the Gordon Unit continuously for the last 15 months. The Gordon Unit has about 20 cells.
Exactly.
You are not permitted to mix with the other women in the Gordon Unit. You have spent at least 22 hours in your cell every day that you have been in the Gordon Unit. There have been 16 days since November 24 where, because of lockdowns, you have been confined to your cell for the entire 24 hours per day. The maximum period that a prisoner in the Gordon Unit could have out of their cell on any given day is 4 hours, but, quote, that wouldn't happen very often. Your meals and medicine are currently delivered through a flap in your cell door. There is a small concrete yard, approximately 2 metres by 1.5 metres, which adjoins your cell, which, with permission, you may access for fresh air. If prisoners are using the larger exercise yard, which abuts your exercise yard, you may not use your small yard. During your time in the Gordon Unit, you have barely had any contact with other individuals. Permission is required for you to communicate with any other prisoner, which, according to your counsel, is complicated by the fact that you are not informed of the identities of the other prisoners in the Gordon Unit. You currently have approval to communicate with one other prisoner in the Gordon Unit through a wire mesh when the two of you are permitted to use your respective adjoining exercise yards. That other prisoner is undergoing a lengthy sentence for terrorism offences and has attacked other prisoners. You did not ask to communicate with that person and have not communicated with her. The suggestion that you should communicate with her was made by a corrections officer. There is an intercom in your cell which, if permission is granted, you may use to communicate with one other prisoner in the unit at a time, but you have not done so. In order to attend any other part of the prison, for example, the visitors centre or the library, you are driven there escorted by 2 corrections officers. While theoretically prisoners in the Gordon unit are able to access the prison library twice per week for 20 minutes at a time, you have not been able to do so because of staff shortages and a rule that you may not access the library if another is doing so. Consequently, you have only been able to access the library a handful of times during your time in the Gordon unit. United Nations guidelines, known as the Bangkok Rules, provide that a prisoner should not be in separation for more than 15 days at a time, but you have now been in separation continuously for 15 months. There are 2 prisoners in the Gordon unit who have been there in excess of 3 years. And whilst the primary principle in the placement of prisoners is to manage and place them in the least restrictive environment necessary to ensure the safety and security of the individual prisoner and other prisoners, the least restrictive environment can be very restrictive. As for your future conditions of imprisonment, whilst your placement in the Gordon unit is reviewed monthly, Ms. Hosking was unable to say whether you would ever be moved from the Gordon unit.
Interesting.
I infer that given the unprecedented media coverage of your case and the books, documentaries and TV series about you, which are all in the pipeline, you are likely to remain a notorious prisoner for many years to come, and as such remain at significant risk from other prisoners. I turn then to a number of relevant sentencing principles and rules. Section 5 of the Sentencing Act 1991 declares that the only purposes for which sentences may be imposed are just punishment, specific and general deterrence, rehabilitation, denunciation, and protection of the community. I have had regard to all of these sentencing purposes in formulating my sentences, but rehabilitation has taken a backseat because of the gravity of your offending. Other provisions of the Sentencing Act that are of particular relevance to your case are as follows. Under Section 6A to 6F, you fall to be sentenced as a serious violent offender in respect of the 3 murders, meaning that the protection of the community is the principal purpose for which the sentences on those counts must be imposed. Under Section 6F, your status as a serious violent offender must be entered in the court records. Section 11(1) provides relevantly that if a court sentences an offender to be imprisonment for the term of her natural life, the court must, as part of the sentence, fix a period during which the offender is not eligible to be released on parole, unless it considers that the nature of the offence makes the fixing of such a period inappropriate. Section 11A 4A provides that where an offender is sentenced to life imprisonment, the sentencer must fix a non-parole period of at least 30 years, unless it is not in the interests of justice to do so. Is it inappropriate to fix a non-parole period? Would fixing a non-parole period be contrary to the interests of justice? As mentioned above, this is the main dispute that I have to determine. Sentencing case law establishes that, as a general rule, harsher than normal conditions of imprisonment will warrant mitigation of penalty. There is nothing about your conduct whilst in custody which might cast doubt on the application of that general rule. As Ms. Hosking indicated, you are in a management unit to protect you from other prisoners, not vice versa. nor do you have any relevant criminal history. In their written submissions, the prosecution conceded that your conditions of imprisonment are more burdensome than for a mainstream prisoner, and that they are likely to remain so for the foreseeable future. The prosecution submitted that this is a, quote, relevant consideration for sentence. In oral submissions, the prosecution conceded that this consideration was not just relevant, but, quote, important and, quote, weighty, while still pressing for life imprisonment with no possibility of parole. You have effectively been held in continuous solitary confinement for the last 15 months, and at the very least, there is a substantial chance that for your protection, you will continue to be held in solitary confinement for years to come. The Court of Appeal in Yat against the King referred without criticism to the observation that, quote, the adverse health effects of solitary confinement are well established. I note too that Ms. Hosking stated at the plea hearing that, quote, being separated has negative outcomes for people. We're very aware of that. The harsh prison conditions that you have experienced already and the likely prospect of solitary confinement for the foreseeable future are important and weighty considerations which should count for something in the sentencing exercise. In my view, the only scope for making them count is by the fixing of a non-parole period. In opposing the imposition of a non-parole period, the prosecution relied on the Queen against Colston, where the offender was sentenced to life imprisonment without a non-parole period for the savage murders of 3 people. But that case makes clear that, quote, where there is a substantial factor pointing towards clemency, as I consider your present and likely future conditions of imprisonment to be, the fixing of a non-parole period may be appropriate even for an offender who has committed multiple murders. Fixing a non-parole period is not to undervalue the horrendous nature of your offending. Your total effective sentence will be life imprisonment, and the period during which you will be ineligible for parole will be a very substantial one. Please stand. For the attempted murder of Ian Wilkinson, I sentence you to 25 years imprisonment. For the murder of Heather Wilkinson, I sentence you to life imprisonment. For the murder of Gail Patterson, I sentence you to life imprisonment. For the murder of Don Patterson, I sentence you to life imprisonment. All sentences are to be served concurrently. The total effective sentence is life imprisonment, and I fix a non-parole period of 33 years. I declare that you have served 676 days by way of pre-sentence detention. Finally, and by consent, I make the disposal order sought by the prosecution. Would you please remove Ms. Patterson?
Okay, that was Justice Christopher Beale there, live from the Victoria Supreme Court, sentencing triple murderer Erin Patterson to life in prison with a non-parole period of 33 years.
33 years.
I know, right? That's pretty up there.
So she was 48 when she got arrested. They will take into account what she has served. And with that, what did we say? 81
81, yeah.
before she can appeal. Now, I do have another thing to show you. So Ian Wilkinson did speak outside the court. Just getting it. Okay. Share this tab instead.
Good morning. I'll not be taking any questions or making any further comments apart from this statement. My purpose here today is to give some well-earned thanks. Firstly, to Victoria Police, in particular, the Homicide Squad and the team led by Detective Stephen Eppingstall. They made a professional, efficient and effective investigation into what happened at the lunch. They brought to light the truth of what happened with the death of 3 good people. We're grateful for their skills that brought this truth to light. And I'm also very grateful for the kindness and compassion they showed us, me and my family, throughout the long process that has brought us to this day. They've done a wonderful job. I'd like to extend gratitude too to the team from the Office of Public Prosecutions, led by Senior Counsel Nanette Rogers. The court processes are a little bewildering to lay people like me, and we're grateful for their expertise, their hard work, and their perseverance that has secured this conviction. I'd also like to commend them for their kindness and compassion showed to us throughout this long process. They have also done a wonderful job. We're also grateful for the staff of the various public health services that played an important role in dealing with the aftermath of the lunch. There are so many services and agencies and people involved that I can't start naming names. But please, each one, accept my sincere gratitude for the part that you have played in this process. We're thankful that when things go wrong, there are good people and services and systems available to help us recover. I'd like to encourage all those involved to keep turning up and serving others. Our lives and the life of our community depends on the kindness of others. I'd like to encourage everybody to be kind to each other. Finally, I want to say thank you to the many people from across Australia and around the world who, through their prayers and messages of support, have encouraged us. I thank the people of the Leongatha and Currumbara communities in particular. Your thoughtfulness and care has been a great encouragement to us. That's all I wish to say for now. Please respect our privacy as we continue to grieve and heal. Thank you for listening. I hope you all have a great day. Thank you.
So that's what he had to say outside the court.
Wow.
What I thought was worth listening to.
Yes.
I don't know. I have 4 words. I guess this will probably be the last one we'll be doing on Erin unless she goes and causes some big trouble or
Yeah.
we get phone calls from prison. Getting phone calls from prison. No, I think this will be the last. As I said, unless she causes some big commotion, then of course we will cover it. I think I'm going to end it with saying 4 words to Erin, and that's God don't like ugly. You tried to take a pastor and his family out. What can we say?
Yeah.
He is.
Yeah.
Every time I have seen him, I mean, he's a pastor. It's what he does, but even in his victim statement, do you know what I mean? He gave forgiveness to Erin and, do you mean, asked her to finally tell the truth. But yeah, he's a very kind man. And it just goes to show the kind of people she tried to take out.
Exactly.
Like, can you imagine the wife that was behind him? My nanny used to always say that a good man's got an even better wife behind them. So can you imagine the wife that was with him
Yeah.
and her family? And as I said, God don't like ugly.
No.
Right, well, we'll play our Erin video and then we'll get out of here, I suppose.
Yeah,
Be our last chance to play it.
that's true.
In the shadows where the whispers dwell, Erin's got a story that she knows too well. Invited them over for a peaceful lunch, but poison lingered, just waiting to crunch. Love turned to sickness, secrets unfold in this twisted tale. The truth is told. Erin Patterson, what have you done? A deadly game, now the fear has begun. Lies whispered softly, but the truth is a knife in the heart of a family. Now they've lost their life. Hours passed slowly, then chaos arose. Family in agony, nobody knows. 6 weeks in limbo, they pray and they weep, while Erin keeps hiding, her secrets run deep. Guilty or innocent, which road will she take? In the end, it's the truth that will break. Erin Patterson, what have you done? A deadly game, now the fear has begun. Lies whispered softly, but the truth is a knife in the heart of a family. Now they've lost their life. Here at the end, the darkness won't fade. Erin's left standing, the price has been paid.
Shadows where the whispers dwell. Erin's got a story that she knows too well. Invited them over for a peaceful lunch, but poison lingered, just waiting to crunch. Love turned to sickness, crickets unfold in this twisted tale. The truth is told. Erin Patterson, what have you done? A deadly game, not the fear has begun. Eyes whisper softly, now are the truth feet. The family lost their love.
All hearts stop because it makes me see every head in us at family's life. I'll start again, take our sins up, but let's begin. No family in the world, the fantasy.
Darkness won't fade. There is a standing, praise have been paid.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for coming today and for your support. And
Yes.
we'll see you next time. So I am working on a couple of other ones. I do have one on Desi Freeman that I'm working on. I think we're up to like
Yeah.
11 now. He's still free.
Uh,
I am working on one for him. And I do have a special one that I'm working on. Someone sent me a spotlight thing and I've done a lot of research into it.
okay.
It's about when do we accept an apology after a crime. So it's a very interesting one that I'm working on. It's a little surprise for everyone. But I'm nearly finished it, so hopefully we'll have it up in the next week as well.
Awesome.
Yeah. All right, then. I will see you all next time. Thanks for coming, everyone.
No worries. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Every true crime on the rise. Investigate the scene, uncover the lies. From Melbourne to Sydney, all the way to Perth. No case too tough, we'll dig into the dirt. We'll crack the code, find the truth, bring justice to the table. No excuse, Australian legends in the game, bringing light to darkness, no shame. Just got a super chat, let's celebrate. Raise a glass for all the cases we've solved in the past. With eyes wide open, we'll never rest. Aussie true crime, we're the best. From cold cases to missing persons, we'll leave no stone unturned. Every virgin detectives in our hearts will never give up. But justice and truth will always hear us. Ooh, thank you so much. Let's celebrate, raise a glass for all the cases we solved in the past. With eyes wide open, we'll never rest. Aussie true crime, we're the best. Thank you so much. Let's celebrate, raise a glass for all the cases we solved in the past. With eyes wide open, we'll never rest. Aussie true crime, we're the best. For all the cases we solved in the past. With eyes wide open, we'll never rest. Aussie true crime, we're the best. Let's celebrate, raise a glass for all the cases we solved in the past. With eyes wide open, we'll never rest. Aussie true crime, we're the best. Thank you so much.